Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my 2024 NFL predictions. So, beginning things, going through division by division, beginning things in the AFC East. Fourth in the East, I've got the Patriots. So, the Patriots enter a new era as they parted ways with Bill Belichick and hired Gerard Mayo as the team's next head coach. But the Patriots are clearly the worst team in the AFC East and will probably be one of the worst teams in the entire NFL. But they have announced Jacoby Brissett as the team's starting quarterback, but I would expect the third overall pick, Drake May, to take over sooner rather than later. If I had to take a guess, I'll say May would be starting by week 10. Now, the rest of the Patriots offense isn't very good. They'll have a solid run game with Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, but their receivers aren't great. I do like rookie Jalen Polk from Washington, but outside of him, their next best receiver is Kendrick Bourne, who's never had more than 800 yards in a season. But the thing that's going to make this offense really bad is the offensive line, which is one of the worst offensive lines in football. Now, the defense for the Patriots is definitely the strength of their team, but that doesn't say much considering how bad the Patriots offense is. But the defense has some players. I think their secondary is solid. Overall, the Patriots defense isn't anything too impressive, and the Patriots are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. I've got them going 3-14, finishing last in the AFC East. Third in the AFC East, I've got the Dolphins. So the Dolphins are a team that seems to be built more for the regular season than they are for the playoffs. But the Dolphins are going to be good. They're led by one of the best offenses in the NFL, as they extended Tua over the offseason after he led the NFL in passing yards last season. They also have arguably the best receiver in football, Tyreek Hill, and have plenty of other players who are really good and really fast, like Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and Jalen Waddle. Now, the Dolphins' offensive line is okay, but nothing too special, and I do have some concerns about the Miami defense, as they lost defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, as well as a bunch of other impact players, such as Christian Wilkins, Xavier Howard, and Andrew Van Ginkel. Plus, they'll be without edge rusher Bradley Chubb for at least the first 4 weeks, as he recovers from a torn ACL. Now, the Dolphins tried to replace some of those players by signing Anthony Walker, Calais Campbell, and Jordan Poyer, but when you look at who they lost versus who they brought in, I still view it as a pretty big downgrade, and the Dolphins are still going to be a good team, but I've got them making the playoffs with a 10-7 record, third in the AFC East. Second in the AFC East, I've got the Jets. So the Jets are a team with a lot of potential this season, and it feels similar to where the Jets were at the start of last season. Now, obviously last season didn't go according to plan, with Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles 4 snaps into his Jets career. But Aaron Rodgers is back healthy, and as long as he can stay on the field, the Jets should be in line for a good season. But the Jets made some great additions along the offensive line and great efforts to keep Rodgers upright in the pocket, adding Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and John Simpson, while also drafting Olu Fashanu in the first round. So the Jets' offensive line should be good. The run game should also be good, as Breece Hall now has an actual offensive line to run behind, and he's already been good to start his career. And then Garrett Wilson should have a huge season now that he has an actual quarterback, because he's been playing with Zach Wilson for the past couple seasons. Then, the Jets' defense should be great. They carried the team last year, and is going to be quite good once again. They have stars on all 3 levels of the defense, and as long as the Jets can stay healthy, they're a playoff team. I've got them going 11-6 and making the playoffs for the first time since 2010. And winning the AFC East, it is the Bills. So the Bills, they lost some key players in the offseason, but they're still a great team, and they're still going to be a contender in the AFC as long as they have Josh Allen. Outside of Josh Allen, the Bills have one of the more underrated running backs in the NFL in James Cook, who started to really break out at the end of last season. Now, the Bills' receiver core is concerning. They no longer have Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis, and their top 3 receivers are now rookie Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel. So that's definitely a major downgrade there. The defense is also a cause for concern. Not necessarily concern, but it's a little weaker than it has been in previous seasons, as they lost their safety duo Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, and star linebacker Matt Milano is also out for the season after he got hurt in practice. But those losses are definitely concerning for the Bills' defense, but I still think their defense will be good. They just might not be quite as good as it was within the past couple of seasons. And as far as the receiver position goes, I think they'll only find answers as the season progresses. But the Bills, they're still going to be a great team. They'll win the AFC East with an 11-6 record. Moving on to the AFC North, fourth there, we've got the Steelers. So the Steelers are a team, they're always solid, as Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season during his 17 years as Steelers head coach. But the Steelers, they're going to be a decent team once again, despite playing in a really tough division, and I think they're clearly the worst team in the division. But the Steelers will be starting Russell Wilson at quarterback after he beat out Justin Fields, and if Russ can have a decent season, I think the Steelers could be solid. Now, I don't think he'll have a great year because, one, he's older and past his prime, but two, the Steelers receivers outside of George Pickens aren't that great. Now, the run game has been a strength of the offense for the past few years, and that should be the case again as they have a good backfield duo of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Plus, the Steelers' offensive line has been improving as they've been making improvements to it throughout the past couple years, and they just drafted Troy Fautanu in the draft. And then the Steelers' defense has been consistently good over the past few seasons, and the defense is going to be good once again. They still have stars like TJ Watt and Micah Fitzpatrick, plus they also signed Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott to make the defense even better. But the Steelers, they're going to be around 500 like they are practically every season. The defense will carry this team, but if the offense finds something with Russell Wilson at quarterback, they could potentially be a playoff team. I think they have the potential to get into the playoffs. I've got them 8-9, but I think that's more closer to their floor than their ceiling. Third in the North, I've got the Browns. So the Browns, they're a very interesting team. They made the playoffs last season with 5 different starting quarterbacks before they settled on Joe Flacco down the stretch. But Deshaun Watson is now back healthy, but during his time with the Browns, he either hasn't been playing due to a suspension or injury, and when he has been on the field, he really hasn't been that good. But the Browns need Deshaun Watson to go back to being the guy he was with the Texans, because otherwise, it's not looking too good. Now, outside of Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb is working his way back from a devastating knee injury, but he will miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. But there's also no guarantee Nick Chubb will be the same player he was before his injury, because he suffered a really serious knee injury. Now, the Browns receiver core is good with Amari Cooper, and Jerry Jeudy should be solid, and I think he'll be helped by a change of scenery after a trade from Denver. Plus, the Browns have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. The Browns' defense is also elite, was one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, and should be good once again, with great players everywhere, and the Browns' defense will carry this team. Now, the Browns are going to go as far as Deshaun Watson can take them. If he can go back to being a good quarterback, the Browns are definitely a playoff team with potential to make some serious noise in the playoffs. But if Watson plays how he's been playing with the Browns, I'm not even sure the Browns make the playoffs because they play in such a tough division and the AFC is just loaded with good teams. But I want to see Deshaun Watson actually return to being a good quarterback before I'm going to pick him to lead the Browns to the playoffs. I have the Browns still having a good year, or solid year, going 9-8, but missing the playoffs. Second into the AFC North, I've got the Ravens. So the Ravens were the top seed in the AFC last season, but ended up falling short in the AFC Championship game. But the Ravens should be good once again. The offense is going to have a dominant run game after they sign Derrick Henry, and I'm not sure who's stopping a Lamar Jackson-Derrick Henry read option. Plus, the Ravens' passing game has potential to be good, as I really like Zay Flowers heading into his second season, and he was actually pretty good as a rookie. Plus, Lamar Jackson is coming off one of the best passing seasons of his career. Now, I do have concerns about the Ravens' offensive line, as they lost both of their guards and their right tackle, so there is definitely a downgrade and cause for concern there. But the Ravens' offense is just going to run everyone over. Now, defensively, the Ravens lost some key players and pieces like defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, as well as safety Geno Stone and linebacker Patrick Queen. But their defense will still be above average. They just might not be the best defense in the league like they were last season. But the Ravens still going to have a good year. I have them second in the AFC North, making the playoffs with an 11-6 record. And winning the AFC North, I've got the Bengals. So I have the Bengals as the top team in the AFC North. I do believe they are the best team in this division as long as they can stay healthy. That is something they struggled to do last season, but the Bengals now have Joe Burrow back healthy, and he has one of the best receiver duos in the NFL with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Although Jamar Chase does want a new contract, and his status to begin the season is uncertain, but I wouldn't expect him to miss that many games. But the Bengals, they're going to have a great pass game. Now, I am expecting the run game to take a step back from where they were last season, as they lost 1,000-yard rusher Joe Mixon in free agency, and the Bengals now have Zach Moss and Chase Brown handling the work running back. Then the Bengals' offensive line should be pretty good. They've worked on building it up a lot in the previous off seasons. Plus, they spent their first round pick on Amarius Mims. So the Bengals' offensive line should be pretty good. Then defensively for the Bengals, they lost a few players, and that has me a little concerned as these two players they lost, DJ Reader and Chidobe Awuzie, two underrated players, and they played key roles in the Bengals' defense. But I still think the Bengals will be good on the defensive side of the ball, and as long as they can stay healthy, I've got them winning a tough AFC North division with an 11-6 record. Moving on to the AFC South, fourth there, I've got the Titans. So the Titans are pretty clearly the worst team in this division. They're in the middle of a rebuild, and they probably won't be that good this upcoming season. They hired Bengals offensive coordinator Bryce Callahan as their head coach, and he played a big role in the development of Joe Burrow, so maybe he can do the same thing to Titans second-year quarterback Will Levis. Now, I actually really like what the Titans have done, adding playmakers around Levis, as they have a nice 1-2 punch at running back with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Plus, they have a solid receiver trio of Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, and DeAndre Hopkins, although Hopkins might miss the start of the season due to a knee injury. But the Titans' offense has potential, but it's going to depend on how good they are on two things. The first is Will Levis, because he's really just an unknown. If he can have a good year, the Titans' offense can definitely be better than we will expect. But the other thing that could hold this offense back is the offensive line, which isn't that good. Now, the Titans' defense made some nice pickups this offseason, adding two great corners in Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, plus they signed safety Quandre Diggs. Those are nice additions to the secondary. But the Titans, they're a team that has potential. I still think they're at least a year away, but I expect the Titans to show some progress this season, and I've got them going 5-12. Third in the AFC South, I've got the Colts. So the Colts are a really interesting team heading into this season. They went 9-8 last year, were one game away from the playoffs, and they did that with Gardner Minshew, who's the team's backup quarterback. Now, starting quarterback Anthony Richardson is back healthy for this season, but he's a major unknown, as Richardson enters his second NFL season, but we really didn't get to see much of him last season because he was hurt for the majority of the year. And he's still a player who does not have much NFL experience, obviously, and still has a lot of potential, but I think the Colts are going to get a lot of ups and downs with Anthony Richardson this season. And I've got the Colts third in the division. Now, Richardson will be helped out by a good run game with Jonathan Taylor and a nice receiver trio of Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Ricky Adonai Mitchell. Plus, the Colts have a pretty solid offensive line. And the Colts' defense was a major weakness for this team last season. I'm expecting it to be that way once again, especially in the secondary where they're very young but have potential. The Colts overall as a team have a lot of potential this season. If Anthony Richardson can have a good season at quarterback, I think the Colts will have a good season and are a playoff team. I think Richardson will show promise and show he's the guy at quarterback for the Colts, but they'll go 7-10 this season. Second in the South, I've got the Jaguars. So the Jaguars really fell apart late in last season and ended up missing the playoffs, and I think that could carry over into this season. They gave quarterback Trevor Lawrence a huge extension, which is a massive overpay if you ask me, although Lawrence is a solid quarterback, just not a top-tier quarterback like he's being paid. Now, Trevor Lawrence needs a bounce-back season after he had a rough year last year, but the Jaguars will have a solid run game with Travis Etienne, who has had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. They also added Gabe Davis and rookie Brian Thomas Jr. to the receiver room, alongside Christian Kirk. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they brought in safety Darnell Savage and defensive tackle Eric Armstead. So the Jaguars should be a solid team. I don't think they'll be anything too great. I've got them missing the playoffs again with an 8-9 record. And winning the AFC North, I have the Texans. So the Texans, they were really surprising last season, making it to the divisional round of the playoffs and going 10-7. Now the Texans should be good once again, and they have potential to be even better, as CJ Stroud was great as a rookie, and he can take a step forward in year 2. Plus, the Texans really improved the supporting cast around him, as they traded for Stephon Diggs, and that gives them a really good receiver trio of second-year receiver Tank Dell and Nico Collins as well, who had a breakout year last year with 1,300 yards. So all that will give the Texans an even better passing game. Plus, I think their offense will be more balanced with the addition of Joe Mixon, who should improve their run game. Now, the Texans' defense was good, and they have a lot of young players like Will Anderson Jr., Jalen Petrie, and Derek Stingley Jr., who all continue to improve. Plus, they added edge rusher Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, who had 16.5 sacks last season. But there's a lot of hype surrounding the Texans entering this season, and it's for good reason. Texans, they'll win the AFC South with an 11-6 record. Moving on to the AFC West, fourth there, I've got the Raiders. So the Raiders enter year one under Antonio Pierce, who was good as the interim head coach last season, and is now the full-time coach. But the Raiders, they're going to have a rough season. They're starting Gardner Minshew at quarterback, who he's solid but nothing too great. And the Raiders have some weapons like Devontae Adams and two good tight ends, Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. But the run game, which was a big part of the offense last year, is going to take a step back after they lost Josh Jacobs in free agency. And the Raiders' defense outside of Max Crosby is pretty bad. Maybe the Raiders can reach 7 wins, but I don't think they'll get there. I've got them 4-13. Third in the AFC West, I've got the Broncos. So the Broncos are an interesting team. They were decent last season with Russell Wilson at quarterback, and I think they had a chance to make the playoffs if they didn't bench him late in the year. But they now are starting first-round pick Bo Nix at quarterback, and we don't really know what to expect from him. I don't love the rest of the Broncos' offense. I don't think the run game of Javonte Williams is anything too great. And the receivers are solid with Courtland Sutton, who's pretty good, and I like Marius Mims. But this offense doesn't really excite me. Then the defense for the Broncos is okay. They're an interesting team. They have potential, but I don't see them being anything too good. I've got them 6-11. Second in the AFC West, I've got the Chargers. So the Chargers are another really interesting team. They hired Jim Harbaugh, which was a great hire, but what they're doing offensively is quite confusing. Obviously, they have Justin Herbert, who's one of the 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But even though they have a great quarterback, it seems like the Chargers are going to be extremely run-heavy and not throw the ball that much. Obviously, they're still going to throw the ball a decent amount because the NFL is a pass-first league, but they might be the most run-heavy team of any team in the NFL. As the Chargers' top 3 receivers are Josh Palmer, rookie Ladd McConkey, and former first-round pick Quentin Johnston, although I'm pretty sure he forgot how to catch a football. On top of the Chargers not having any receivers, they also have Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator, who really likes to run the football. And when you pair him with Jim Harbaugh, another guy who really likes to run the football, that head coach offensive coordinator combo is going to do a lot of running the ball with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Now, the run game should be good as they're running behind a great Chargers offensive line. And then the Chargers defense brought in Jesse Minter as their defensive coordinator as he followed Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. But the Chargers defense has some good players like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James, and Asante Samuel Jr. They just weren't able to put it together in previous seasons. But maybe a new defensive system will help. The Chargers could have the potential to be good. I think they're going to get held back because they're going to be too run-heavy. But if you get Justin Herbert, some receivers, have a more balanced offense, this is a Chargers team that could make the playoffs, but I've got them going 8-9 and just missing out in the playoffs. And winning the AFC West, no shock here, it is the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are clearly winning this division. They're obviously the best team in the division. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls and are looking to become the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls. But the Chiefs' offense should actually be even better than they were last season, as Patrick Mahomes now actually has receivers. Rashee Rice is coming off a promising rookie season with 938 yards. Plus, they took Xavier Worthy in the first round, who gives the Chiefs a deep threat who can actually catch. Plus, they signed Hollywood Brown, although he is currently injured. And obviously, you can't forget about Travis Kelce, who's the best tight end in the league. The Chiefs also have a good run game with Isaiah Pacheco, and the Chiefs' offensive line is good, although I do have concerns about their left tackle, with rookie Kingsley Suamate-Etis there. But overall, I think the offensive line should be good. Now, defensively, the Chiefs were great last year, and they had one of the best defenses they've had in years, and they should be good once again on the defensive side of the ball. They had traded away L'Jarius Sneed due to contract issues, but they'll still have a great defense. The Chiefs, arguably the best team in the NFL, they'll win the West for the 9th straight season. I've got them going 13-4. Moving on to the NFC. In the East, 4th there, I've got the Commanders. So the Commanders are a team, they have potential. They're not going to be very good this season, but they definitely are looking good as you move forward and as long as the team develops the way they should. I like rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, and he'll be one of the best rookie quarterbacks. especially considering what he can do as a runner. And now there are some solid players around Jaden Daniels, like Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson, but I don't love the Commanders' offensive line. And then this defense was brutal for the Commanders last season. Dan Quinn being a defensive-minded head coach will help. They also signed Bobby Wagner, but I still don't see the defense being very good. Commanders, a team with potential. I've got them going 5-12. Third in the NFC East, I've got the Giants. So the Giants, they're a really interesting team. They can be anywhere from terrible to decent, but I don't see them being any good. The Giants still have Daniel Jones at quarterback. This is likely his final year because the Giants have an out in his contract after this season. But Daniel Jones does have a true wide receiver one with Malik Nabers for the first time in his NFL career. I also like Wan'Dale Robinson at receiver. Now, the Giants lost one of their best players in Saquon Barkley and replaced him with Devin Singletary and rookie Tyrone Tracy from Purdue. So that is a major downgrade. But the offensive line does seem to be improving a little bit. I'm not saying it's good, but it has been a major weakness for the Giants for a long time. But at least in the preseason, they showed signs of improvement. Now, the Giants' defense is interesting. I really like their front seven after trading for Brian Burns, as they know have a good defensive line. Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. I like their linebackers, Bobby Okereke and Michael McFadden as well. But I do worry about the Giants' secondary outside of second-year corner Deonte Banks. It's pretty bad. Now, as a Giants fan, the Giants are such a weird team. I don't know what to expect from the Giants. I've got them going 5-12. I think they'll be somewhere around that. Maybe they can be better, but I wouldn't expect them to be too good. Second in the NFC East, I've got the Eagles. So the Eagles, they're an interesting team. They made the Super Bowl in 2022 and looked like they were headed there again after they started 10-1 last season. But they then lost 6 of their last 7 games, including a first-round playoff exit. But the Eagles did make some nice additions to the team, and they should be better overall. Offensively, they hired Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator, but they're going to need Jalen Hurts to cut down on the turnovers he had last season. The Eagles also signed Saquon Barkley, and he's going to be really good this season as he now gets run behind an actual offensive line. Although the Eagles did lose Jason Kelce, who retired, they still have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Then the defense was a big problem down the stretch of last season for the Eagles, but they made some major improvements there, and I like some of the players they brought in. They hired Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator, signed Bryce Huff from the Jets, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is back after a year with the Lions, and they drafted corners Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So, I still have a few concerns about the secondary, but I like Mitchell and DeJean, who they brought in via the draft. And Eagles, they should be better than they were last season, at least at the end of the season. They'll make the playoffs with an 11-6 record, second in the NFC East. And winning the East, I've got the Cowboys. So the Cowboys, they had their typical Cowboys season last year. Great regular season, losing early in the playoffs. And they'll probably be similar to that again this season. Dak Prescott is coming off one of the best seasons of his career, and CeeDee Lamb is also coming off his best season of his career, and is one of the best receivers in the NFL, plus Brandon Cooks is a good second option. So the Cowboys' passing game is good, but the run game is not so good. Because they lost Tony Pollard, and what do they go do? They go re-sign Zeke, who's 29 years old, and has been washed for several years. Now, on top of a running back who hasn't been good in at least 3 years, the Cowboys' offensive line also lost a couple key players, such as long-time left tackle Tyron Smith. So I have concerns about the run game, which could impact the offense, forcing them to be a little bit more one-dimensional, although I do think the pass game is good. And then the Cowboys' defense is good. Micah Parsons is one of the best players in the entire NFL. Trayvon Diggs is back healthy, and the defense should be good for the Cowboys. I've got them going 11-6 and winning the division for the third time in the last 4 seasons. Moving on to the NFC North, fourth there, I've got the Vikings. So the Vikings, I have them last, although they're not actually that bad, but I don't think they'll be too good either. The quarterback position is a major weakness after going from Kirk Cousins last year to Sam Darnold, as rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy tore his meniscus and is out for the season, and that's a major downgrade. Now, maybe Sam Darnold can be decent with targets like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and T.J. Hawkinson, but, I mean, he's Sam Darnold. Now, the run game was pretty bad for the Vikings last season, but they signed Aaron Jones, and I also like Ty Chandler, so I'm expecting some improvement there. And the Vikings defense has been improving, although I don't think their defense will have too great of a season because they play in a tough division with three teams who should have good offenses. But I've got the Vikings going 6-11, although they've got some potential. Third in the NFC North, I've got the Bears. So there's a lot of hype surrounding the Bears this season, and I've even seen people say they'll make the playoffs. I think the Bears are headed in the right direction. I'm not going to say they'll make the playoffs year one with Caleb Williams, but I really like what the Bears are doing. As not only do the Bears finally have a good quarterback, but they've put him in a position to succeed right away. As Caleb Williams is going to have a great first season in the NFL, as he's surrounded by great players like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, first round pick Rome Odunze, and they also brought in DeAndre Swift, who's going to make the run game better. And the offensive line is also solid. Now, defensively for the Bears, they're almost there. They signed Kevin Byard and still have some great players like Montez Sweat, Tremaine Edmonds, and Jalen Johnson. I'm really excited about the potential of the Bears. They can definitely make the playoffs. I don't have them there this early, but they're going to be a solid team. I've got them 7-10, which is the same record they had last year, but they're going to be better than their record might suggest, and they have a very bright future. Second in the North, I've got the Packers. So the Packers were a team great down the stretch of the season last year, winning 6 of their last 8 regular season games, and I think they'll carry that success they found late last season into this season. As Jordan Love really took a step forward at the end of last season, and he's going to continue to improve the more he plays. As the Packers, they've got some good young receivers, but a little underrated as well. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed are a good trio. The run game is going to be better, even though it was already good, as they signed Josh Jacobs in free agency. And Josh Jacobs is going to have a much better year than he did last year, now that he's a part of an actual offense. And the Packers' defense was bad last season, but they are making improvements there. They fired defensive coordinator Joe Barry, brought in Jeff Hafley, who's a former Boston College head coach, and the Packers' defense should be good. They've got a good defensive line with Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, and Kenny Clark, and I really like the addition of Xavier McKinney in the secondary. But the Packers are a great team. They can definitely win this division, but I think it'll be close in the division. The Packers won't win the division. I've got them second, but they're in the playoffs at 11-6. And winning the NFC North for the second straight season, it is the Lions. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game last year, and they have the type of team to make it there again, and I think their team might even be better. As offensively, they didn't lose a single player, and they didn't really gain anybody, but the offense was great last year. Jared Goff got an extension, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are a great 1-2 punch at running back, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great receiver, plus they've got one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Now, the defense was a weakness of the Lions last season, but I really like the additions they made to the defense, signing defensive tackle DJ Reader, corner Carlton Davis, and drafting corner Terrion Arnold in the first round. So I like those additions. The defense will be much improved this season. The Lions, overall better team, and they were already really good last year. I've got them 13-4. Moving on to the NFC South, fourth there, I've got the Saints. So the Saints are really a weird team. They went 9-8 last year, didn't really lose any key players or make any key additions to the team that would really impact them at all. I just don't think the Saints are that good. Offensively, they still have Derek Carr at quarterback, and he's been steadily declining over the past few seasons. Alvin Kamara hasn't been the guy he once was. Chris Olave is a good receiver, but the Saints' offense isn't too great. Now, the defense has been strong. They also signed Chase Young, and the defense will be the strength of the team once again, but I just don't get excited about the Saints at all. They're a pretty boring team, and I just don't think they'll be that good. I've been finishing fourth in the NFC South with a 5-12 record, and this could be the final year for head coach Dennis Allen. Third in the NFC South, I've got the Panthers. So the Panthers made a lot of really nice moves this offseason, and they started with hiring Dave Canales as their head coach. As he's turned Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield into good quarterbacks, so now we'll have to see if he can do the same thing with Bryce Young. But the Panthers have also done a really nice job building around Bryce Young, as obviously they hired Dave Canales, they drafted running back Jonathan Brooks and receiver Xavier Legette, plus they also signed Deontay Johnson, and have been working on improving the offensive line. So this is an offense that has potential. Really depends on Bryce Young. I'm not the biggest Bryce Young fan, but we'll have to see if he can take a step forward after an awful rookie year. Now, the Panthers' defense lost Brian Burns, but I don't think they're too good. They could be decent. They're a team with potential, and I think the Panthers will show improvement this season and go 5-12. Second in the South, I've got the Buccaneers. So the Bucs are an interesting team. They went 9-8 last year, and they won the division and made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. They have a pretty similar team. They re-signed Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, which should make the offense good, and the defense has good players like Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr., and others. But the Buccaneers aren't going to be able to get a ton of free wins in this division anymore because the division is more competitive. The Bucs are going to be a solid team. I've got them going 9-8 again, but just missing out in the playoffs. And that means winning the South, I have the Falcons. So the Falcons, I have them winning the South over the Buccaneers because they were a few pieces away last year, and I think they've gotten some of those players they were missing. They got rid of Arthur Smith, which was step one. Then they got Kirk Cousins, which is a massive upgrade over Desmond Ridder. So the Falcons offense, now that they actually have a quarterback, they're going to be good, as they've got talent all over the field with Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, plus they've got a solid offensive line. The defense should be pretty good as well after the additions of Matt Judon and Justin Simmons, but the Falcons team is going to be pretty good. I've got them 11-6. Moving on to the NFC West, fourth there, I've got the Cardinals. So the Cardinals are a team, they were not good last season, but they could be decent this season, especially with Kyler Murray now healthy to start the season. The Cardinals actually have some solid playmakers along the offense with Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, and Trey McBride. Plus, obviously, we can't forget about the addition of one of the best receiver prospects we've ever seen, Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Cardinals actually have the potential to be quietly solid on offense, although the offensive line isn't great. Now, the defense also isn't anything too great, but they're decent. Cardinals, obviously still rebuilding. They're at least a year away, but they've got some pieces to work with. Third, in the NFC West, I've got the Seahawks. So the Seahawks took a step back last season going 9-8, and they missed the playoffs. They've now hired Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald as their head coach. Offensively, the Seahawks, Geno Smith took a step back last season, and a lot of the offensive success will ride on his shoulders because outside of him, they've got a good offense. I really like the running back duo of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and they have three good receivers, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Plus, the Seahawks defense was solid last year, and they should be even better now that Mike Macdonald comes in as their head coach. Seahawks, they're right there, borderline playoff team. It depends on Geno. I've got them going on 9-8, just missing the playoffs. Second in the division, I've got the Rams. So the Rams had a pretty surprising season last year, and they're going to be good again. Offensively, they were great. Matthew Stafford hasn't slowed down. They've got a great running back, Kyren Williams, and they've got two outstanding receivers, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And this is also an improved offensive line from last season. Then defensively, the Rams lost Raheem Morris, who was their defensive coordinator, and obviously the big one, Aaron Donald retired. Now, obviously losing Aaron Donald is a huge loss to any defense. He's one of the greatest defensive players of all time. But I don't really think the Rams defense will take a significant step back. Defensive tackle Kobe Turner was great as a rookie and should only continue to improve. And they also brought in some great players along the defensive line, such as edge rusher Jared Verse, who I think is going to have a huge rookie year. Plus, they signed Tre'Davious White in the secondary, who should be good as long as he can stay healthy. And that's something he struggled to do. But the Rams are a team might be a little slept on heading into this season. I've got them going 10-7 and making the playoffs. And winning the NFC West, it is pretty obvious it's going to be the 49ers. They made the Super Bowl last year. Obviously didn't win it, but they're right in the Super Bowl conversation again. Their offense is great. You can say what you want about Brock Purdy. I think he's a good quarterback, and he's going to lead the 49ers offense to have a great season. Christian McCaffrey is the reigning offensive player of the year. They've got a good receiver duo of Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Now that he's got his contract, he's happy. And obviously, they drafted Ricky Pearsall, but speaking of Pearsall, I hope he's okay and has a speedy recovery after what happened to him. And the 49ers offensive line is also good, although Trent Williams also is currently unhappy and wants a new contract. Then the 49ers defense is one of the best in the league. Didn't lose anybody from last year's team. Won't have Dre Greenlaw to start the year after he tore his Achilles running onto the field in the Super Bowl. But the 49ers defense, which was top 3 in points per game last season, will be great once again. The 49ers, one of the best teams in the NFL. I've got them winning the West with a 13-4 record. Before we get to my playoff predictions, I'm briefly running through the awards. My comeback player is Aaron Rodgers. I think that's pretty easy as long as he can stay healthy and put up solid numbers. It'll be him, although Joe Burrow could do the same thing. My coach of the year is Dan Campbell. My offensive rookie of the year is Caleb Williams. I don't think the Bears will be like the Texans last year. I don't think Caleb Williams will have a CJ Stroud-like rookie season, but Caleb Williams will have a good rookie year and win offensive rookie of the year. My defensive rookie of the year was really tough considering the first 14 picks of the draft were all offensive players, but I decided my defensive rookie of the year is Jared Verse. Offensive player of the year is tough, but I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. My defensive player of the year is Micah Parsons, and the MVP is really tough, but one of these years he's got to win it. It's going to be Josh Allen. And moving on to my playoff predictions, beginning with going through the seeds for each conference. In the AFC, my 1 seed is the Chiefs, 2nd is the Bills, 3rd is the Texans, 4 Bengals, 5 Ravens, 6 Jets, and 7 Dolphins. And in the NFC, my 1 seed is the 49ers, the 2nd seed is the Lions, 3 is the Falcons, 4 is the Cowboys, 5 is the Eagles, 6 is the Packers, and 7 is the Rams. So going through round by round, starting in the wildcard round with the AFC, we've got the Dolphins at the Bills. The Dolphins are not winning in Buffalo in January. The Bills will win that one. The Jets and Texans, the 3-6 matchup, that is interesting. But I'm going to take the Jets because of their defense. And then the Ravens and the Bengals. This will be the 3rd time they met this season, but I'm going to take the Bengals to advance. And in the wildcard round for the NFC, the Rams at the Lions. Just like last season, this is a better Rams team. This is a better Lions team. I'm going to take the Lions. Packers at the Falcons. Falcons, I do think they're good, but I'm going to take the Packers to move on there. And then the Eagles at the Cowboys. This is a really interesting matchup if you look at this here. These teams always seem to split the season series with the home team winning each time. But in this case, do I really want to pick the Cowboys to win in the playoffs? I mean, they haven't really done it, but I'll take them to beat the Eagles. Then in the divisional round in the AFC, we've got the Jets at the Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs, although I think the Jets will be very good this year. And then the Bills at the Bengals. The Bengals at the Bills. That's the 4 seed and the 2 seed. That's another tough one, but I'm going to take the Bengals to move on. And then in the NFC, we got the Packers at the 49ers again. And the 49ers just own the Packers, especially in the playoffs. I'm going to take them to move on. The Cowboys at the Lions. There's no way I'm picking the Cowboys to make the NFC Championship game. They haven't been there in a long time. I'll take the Lions to move on. I also just think the Lions are the better team. Then in the conference championships, we got the AFC Championship, the Bengals and the Chiefs. We've seen this matchup before. I would take the Bengals, but the Chiefs with actual receivers and a defense is insanely scary. But I don't want to have the Chiefs make the Super Bowl again. I'm going to take the Bengals to move on, although that's truly coin flip, and it could be the Chiefs. And in the NFC Championship, the Lions at the 49ers, a rematch of last year. This is really interesting. The Lions were about a half a football away from making it to the Super Bowl last year before they blew the lead. I think this is a better Lions team. This is a better defense. And the Lions, they could win the Super Bowl. They really could. But the 49ers are still the team to beat in the NFC. And until someone shows otherwise, I'm going to pick them to move on. And then in the Super Bowl, we've got the Bengals and the 49ers. Very interesting. 49ers were there last year. Bengals were there a couple years ago. Really tough. I'll take the 49ers. I think they got the better defense. But those are my 2024 NFL predictions. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'm sure you guys disagree with me somewhere. Let me know who you got winning the Super Bowl. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications so you don't miss any other upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.